Ja, it's Bennett. So today we are out in Canyon de Chelly on a very, very windy day. You can't really tell, but we're probably about 30 miles per hour on the winds here, and have a very special guest today who will talk about how their lives got very hard through some mishaps in life, and how they turn all that around, and how they're trying to influence the youth today about not going down the same path he went down. Before I continue, let's get this started.
Harlan Yazzie,
All right.
and my clans are Twirijini, Twahiglini, Twabahe, and Kia'ani. I was born in Fort Defiance, Arizona.
Okay, and is that where you grew up as well?
I grew up out in Pinon.
Pinon.
Arizona is where I grew up.
Okay, that's near Black Mesa, correct?
Yes, it's about, I would have to say 40 miles west of Chelly. My mother remarried out there, out towards Pinon when I was around about 6 years old.
Okay, 6 years old.
So I was pretty much raised out there most of my life.
So, and you finished high school out there?
No, I finished high school out in Mini Farms High School.
Then after that, where did you go on?
Kind of went on and off and on through employment.
Mm-hmm.
I just dove right into the workforce and started working.
Yeah.
That's what I started initially at.
Okay. All right. And then what type of workforce did you get into?
First I started out just doing just residential caregiving first, and then eventually some college. Not too much of college though.
So what were you studying in that one too?
I started out studying just for the liberal
arts.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So, as we spoke on the phone earlier, that you've gone through some hard times and actually did some serious time. After from home all the way to that, what was your path like as far as what eventually led up to you being incarcerated?
Well, there's not really one point. I mean, not really one thing I can really say this was this and that was that. It had to have been a lot of things growing up that led me into that path of life. I would like to acknowledge, first, I went through a lot of trauma growing up. I went through a lot of growing up on my own. My mom and dad, they had their 8 to 5 typical job. And within that time, that's what led me to a lot of, being rebellious. And then eventually it led me into, growing up into being part of the gang, part of one of the few gangs out in Pinon, coming from that walk of life.
Yeah.
And at the same time dabbling into a lot of curiosity, a lot of, drugs and a lot of alcohol at that time. And also, being a father at an early age.
Yeah.
Yeah, when I got out of high school, I had my first daughter when I was 18.
Oh, okay.
So there was a lot of, I guess you could say, a lot of expectations for me at a very young age.
Yep.
Meaning being responsible and having to, provide and raise a daughter at a very young age out of high school. And also being a part of those walks of life, that's when things, started to spiral.
Yep.
And upon that, there's not one point of area I can really say this was that or this was this. A lot of it had to be a spider-like incorporation of a lot of things that led me into, getting further and further into, being a nuisance within the community. And then also being a nuisance not just in that department. I feel that all my responsibilities as a father. I feel that my responsibility as a man, as a son, and then eventually, leading me into prison. There's no thing that I can say that I can point the finger and blame when I can take full accountability for what I've done wrong.
Yeah.
And, I did do what I did, and I did admit that in court. I took the responsibility on myself. I owned up to what I did, And upon that, the few words that I had said to the judge was, I am not looking for pity. I am not looking for leniency. I'm looking to make things right so that I can at least move on with my life after what I've done wrong. And I take full accountability for what I did. So it's not a matter of the time that I do, it's a matter of what I can do to make things right.
Yeah.
Is what I said to the judge at the time.
So what did the judge say during that time?
Well, I had the courtesy of having the very first Native American judge out of the whole U.S. federal judicial system. And her name is Federal Judge Diane Hiwaniptiwa. And her words to me were, I'm trying to decide who I'm really talking to. This individual over here on paper, or this individual here standing before me, taking ownership for his responsibilities and taking full accountability for his actions. And that's something for me that I'm going to have to look into, Mr. Yazzie. And to this day, her words still stick in my mind.
Yeah, definitely.
And that is something that, I have to live with. Knowing that, I took care of my business as you would think, or as some brothers would say in the system. I took care of my business while I was in prison.
Yep.
And I came home, and I've been home since then, since June of 2020.
Wow,
Yeah.
so it's that recent.
Yeah.
Well, recent, but still,
Yeah.
I'm sure it's very fresh to you.
Yeah, it is. It's a life that I don't want anyone to have ever experienced.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of things that I've seen, I heard, I witnessed, and it's no place for nobody to ever be in life.
Yeah.
I don't ever wish that upon anybody.
How old were you when you first got thrown in?
I started out when I was 18.
18.
Started out when I was 18 years old.
Sorry to cut you
Go ahead.
off. Was that around the same time or after you found out you were going to be a father?
That was around before I was become a father. Before that, I was already experiencing and doing a lot of things in the alcohol and narcotic phase, the curiosity of sorts.
And how old were you when you joined a gang?
Man, I was started out. That question I can easily answer. I started out when I was about 10 years old. About 10 years old. By the time I was 12, we were already, I and my cousins and childhood friends I had grown up with since I was, since I was 6 years old. We all grew into it, and we all formed that bond, that clique, and that's when things started to happen. And things grew to be a lot bigger than what they are now to this day, and a lot of losses and a lot of statistical losses, meaning I have a lot of friends that have died to, either a deal gone bad or to being that statistical, alcohol, rollover, or as recent, one of my best friends just recently got re-indicted on a new case, and he's now a lifer. I've lost a lot of friends to the system like that.
Yeah.
And a lot of the meanings to things behind it was that little niche of that bond that we had as brothers. We always looked out for each other, and we had each other's back to the fullest, and that's something that we took to mind and took to heart. And don't get me wrong, it wasn't always about doing bad things. It wasn't always about doing things negatively. It was always about taking care of our families, taking care of what we had, taking care of what we knew, what was there. And that was the concept. It wasn't more and more about how these other street, urban street gangs were. It was more or less of taking care of our people, more or less taking care of where we came from, taking care of, our community. It's what the concept was. But a lot of the negative things, individuals take into mind and get brainwashed into thinking this is what's right and this is what should be right, is what led to a lot of negative things that became to be what it is today.
Mm-hmm.
And I can honestly say that, I was a statistic to it too myself. I ended up eventually gaining a number through it. I ended up, having to, being in and out of the judicial system for a little over 13, 15 years. I don't go and brag about it.
Yeah.
I carry myself accordingly the way I need to, and meaning I don't stick my chest out.
Yeah.
I've done my time. I've done my dues, and that's that.
Mm-hmm.
Life goes on.
Yep.
In a sense, in that way, I've earned my respect in certain areas, but that's behind me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And then I can honestly tell you, a couple of days ago, I had a review hearing here with the U.S. Federal District Court. I have an annual hearing with the federal courts every 6 weeks, and they had asked me a question as to what my thoughts were, what my outlook was on life, and I had responded to the judge by telling, actually not just the judge, the United States prosecutor and also the U.S. probation office, that don't be judging what's on black and white. It shouldn't be that way. You should be judging what's sitting right here before you. What I had done 8 years ago, that's that. I'm living the now. I'm living the moment for here and today. I'm a genuine good person in heart, and that's how I'm speaking, to let you know that I allowed the system to make me look like that on paper, but no more of that. I'm not going to allow that. I'm not going to tolerate the system to making me think that I'm this individual when I'm not that individual.
Yeah.
And that's what led me into doing a lot of life-changing skills, because when I had gone into the system, I didn't know where I was going. I didn't know the outlook of what it would be. Meaning, there's a lot of things in there. There's some things that I can say, and then there's some things I can't say. There's some things I can't talk about. And I had made a promise to myself that I was going to work on my skills.
Mm-hmm.
And I looked in myself and said, hey, these are 5 to 6 weaknesses that I have within myself. I'm going to take the time to look into it and take the time to work on them. I'm going to benefit off this negative situation rather than let this negative situation take me. And I did it.
Mm-hmm.
Meaning I accomplished what my little accomplishments were: getting a degree in prison, gaining a sense of wisdom and knowledge from older brothers that have been down in the system longer than I have. I chose my place where I wanted to be. And that was one of the things that the brothers, the Nene brothers had told me that when I had first come through, was you have to find your place of where you want to be. That's a choice. You have a choice. So through that, I learned how to make better choices for myself so I can make better decisions in life. And that's why I was very lucky. I was very fortunate to make it home, make it back to my family. And that was my whole purpose. And the choices that I had a choice in where I wanted to be, meaning I had a choice of being a knucklehead or minding my business and just do my time, or being one of them ones to mess around with all the other negative sides of things that are in prison. Have that heavy spirituality that you have and continue to let it grow and continue to let it get stronger.